Truth Talks. Please, I'm excited about the Truth Talks. They are addressing true fellowship and what it means, what true fellowship and corporate worship looks like according to the Bible.
I was wondering, should I pick up where I left off when we started with Matthew? Remember, we was walking down, I didn't say Matthews. We were walking down the parables, right? And I believe the last one we touched on was the talents. We were coming to the end of this man who had his talents, and we understood that what he did was his talents was squandered it. I'm going to close out on that because there's no need to go back into there because it's time to roll into the next parable. But I'm also going to open up by saying some things, and I want to put some things out there that will put controversy in your mind. Why would I introduce controversy into teaching? That would be insane, right? It makes the teacher look like he has no credit. Well, the reason why I'm going to introduce controversy into the teaching is because the controversy is what we face all the time, and it's a poorly placed question. When we hear people say, "Aren't you God? Shouldn't you be God? I'm God," we hear these things, which are controversial phrases. But some people will read this passage that we're getting ready to go into, and they will see and identify themselves as God, or say, God is in everybody, God is in everything. You will hear these things as a controversial phrase when we as believers are talking to the non-believers. What I'm trying to say is they'll take what we know is right and try to mix it up as wrong. So I'm going to put it out there not as controversy, but as clarification of what we are truly seeing here in the scriptures. Because if we've been paying attention to the last one, it doesn't have the implication of who God is, but what his character is, what he does, how he deals with his people. So let's close out on the bad stewards. So in the last verse, Matthew 25, 28 through 30, we see something happen to the unworthy steward who looked at God's reward or what was given in his absence when he squandered it. And this is what said. The king said, "Take therefore the talent from him and give it unto which have 10. Remember, one who failed, this one now is going to lose his talent. Now, we talked about what this talent is, right? A gift given from the master. Well, for unto everyone that shall been given, he shall have an abundance. So the one who lost his talent, it was given to those who had. Kind of unfair, right? In your mindset, but no, the abundance comes from the body. So he took from someone who had something that was a gift given to him, unworthy, and he gave it to the worthy. Stay with me here. But from him that hath shall not be taken away everything which he hath, and cast ye the unprofitable servant into the darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. This is because something is lost. Something is taken away. Something that was given to him precious. Now it causes him to go into a state of hurt, shame, panic, weeping, gnashing of the teeth. Now, in a text, when we hear this weeping and gnashing of teeth, it's normally of great sorrow. Well, in this case, it's being left out of the eternal body of Christ. So the sorrow is far more amplified than the worst weeping and gnashing of teeth, because as we're learning as our trip through Revelation, we know that that is eternal torment, to be separated from God. Now, to the servant who failed, his talent is punished, and the talent is given to the servant with 10 talents. This verse highlights the consequences of not using our gifts, abilities, and the gifts and abilities responsibly, and the importance of being productive and faithful. As we see, these are lessons for how to work. Yes, parables was told to the people that were gathered because these people were coming not just to hear a great story, not just for Jesus to give them a bit of news. He was coming to teach them how to work in the kingdom of heaven, because every one of these passages start open with how. The kingdom of heaven is like. These are the workers. These are the things that are being put out. So we see that we should be productive and faithful with the gifts that we get. And I'm going to share something from 1 Corinthians 3, 8 through 9. You don't have to go there. You can listen to it. You can put it down in your notes if you want to read it later. And he who planted and he who waters are one, and each one shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. For we are all fellow workers of God. You are the field of God, the building of God. And that is from Corinthians. As you can see, the work was not to be done, even though the workers are still part of the work themselves. But you see, if you have the talent to do the work, do it. Because God is giving you the talent to do so. Now, why is this important? Why is it important to work your talents, a talent that you have? The thing that's in you, the gift that God has given. Why is it important? Well, as we roll into the next parable, we'll see the importance of working. Well, you can really just stamp it at the bottom line here. We are the field, as was said in Corinthians, right? It also said that we are the building. It also said that we are the field, which puts us in the position of the ones being worked on, the worker, and the place of work. It's kind of crazy, right? You walk around, you feel like you underemployed, and I tell you, you are overly employed by the one who gives you employment. By exploring this parable verse by verse, we can gain a deeper understanding of the importance of stewardship, responsibility, and productivity in our lives. So if you have heard what I said about the talents and you remember, or if you go back and you look at the tape, take these notes as what was said here at the last part and take a look at how am I doing this with my talent. All of these things I say to you are gut checks for me. So in my studies, when I sit there and it hits me in the stomach, I say, well, if it hit me, it may help somebody else. Now, every hit don't hurt. Sometimes they say it's a love tap. So sometimes I appreciate the love taps to bring me back into the things that I should be doing and knowing, letting the scriptures live through me. Now, before I go on, I would like to read from the Psalms. Very small portion of it. I'm going 50. And I'm going to start at 6. Then the heavens declared his righteousness, for God himself judged. Shelah. Hear, O people, I speak, O Israel. It witness against you. I am your God, your God. Or some texts may say the Lord, your God. I do not reprove you for your offerings, and your ascending offerings are continuously before me. I do not take bulls from your house, nor goats out of your pen, for every beast of the field is mine, the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know all the birds in the mountains, and all the moving in the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not speak to you, for the world is mine and all that fills it. I do not eat flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats. And I want to pause right there. Why am I pausing right there? Because reading in the forward, what we're getting ready to talk about, you will hear people say, well, God needs you. They would use this argument against the believer because they love to put two scriptures against each other. But let me clarify, because God is not wavering in what he said. He did not need us. He still does not need us. But the utilization of us is where the glory comes in. Because it's not about how we use our talent, because he gave it to us. He knows the talent that's in us. It's not about what's said about said talent. It's about the utilization or the body. If I took what was mine and buried it on the table, I have taken a gift that was meant to be offered to God and kept it for myself. I don't want you to take away or shrink back in this mess to say that I am being used by the Lord. I'll show you. Now let's go back to Matthew. Now we're going to start here, and one of the main things is we find something very particular that's always in the scriptures, and it always catches my mind, the sheep and the goat. How many of you really dwelled into sheep life? How many of y'all know about sheep? You know about sheep? Know a little bit about sheep. You know they get sheared, they make wool, they make coats. But how many of you know the life of a sheep? How it start? Does every sheep life start the same? You would think so, right? Birth. Shit, right? Every sheep gets born. But it's every sheep life start the same? The answer is no. Some sheeps get rejected straight from birth. And you know what they call these sheeps? A bum lamb or a broken spirited sheep, meaning from birth, it was already broken. I want you to stay here because as we see this separation in the conversation, in the context of what is being said about the sheep and the goat, understanding that the sheep is not something that recognizes itself as in need. It's something that the shepherd has recognized the need. Therefore, if the shepherd is the one that recognizes the need, it is the one that gives the talent to feed, meaning the hirelings, the people that come in and take care of it. But initially, everything that happens to this sheep is the shepherd's responsibility. It cannot be wavered. The sheep cannot control it and say, well, yesterday I was a broken spirited sheep and tomorrow I'm going to go back and suckle from my mother because she's going to love me because yesterday was a mistake. The answer will be no. Nothing will change between the mother and that sheep. I'm pointing it out to say, if you haven't delved into some of these things of the sheep's life and you read the scriptures, you'll breeze past words that mean so more. When Jesus spoke of these things, he didn't speak of it lightly. We take things and we say, oh, well, we know a shepherd. We can understand it. No, go learn the sheep. Because the story is to learn about the shepherd, but it's also to understand the sheep. But in this sense, we see what God is going to do with the sheep and the goat. So a first question I would ask myself is, where do I stand? Do I stand with the goats or do I stand with the sheeps? What is my confession? Just something to think about. Now, as we dig into the scriptures, Matthew 25:31, it states, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, some texts say messengers, with him, then he will sit on his throne. We know that this is an echo for what? So we know that this is an echo for the coming. So the reason why I said is a lot of things you hear in this text, the coming back, the sitting on the throne, who's going to be with him? There you go. So he's talking about the return of Christ coming back for judgment. Christ is going to do what? Separate his sheep from the goat. Now, along with learning about sheep, I had to learn about goats. Now, I've learned quite a few things about goats. First of all, goats are mischievous. They're not like sheep. Goats are actually intelligent. They call sheep dumb on a farm. Goats are highly intelligent. Goats are so intelligent, they will unlock the bin and let the sheep out just so they can watch. You think I'm joking? Goats will stand above all of the other sheep and I can't make this up. The best word I can say is proclaim. He stands in bad while all the other sheep circles around, and then he does something mischievous to cause the farmer or the sheepdog to come over and rustle him up. A goat, in the sense of the farming life, is something that the farmer has on the farm, but he knows that it's not his sheep. You get what I'm saying? Not in the sense of I can't tell the difference. He can tell in the actions of the goat versus the sheep. When we hear stuff like he anoints my head with oil, that has a purpose. That's the sheep is dumb. They'll let flies get on their head and then bump their head in the wall until they die. So the farmer has to go out and say, well, the shepherd got to say, I'll put some oil on his head. Because if I don't, he'll die. But the goat, you never hear that. Because goats, they'll eat flies, they'll sit around and they have their horns. And if they feel as though that the flies annoy them enough, you know what they'll do? They'll ram into a sheep. I don't know why. Maybe because their fur is soft and it doesn't hurt them as much. Or they'll just cause mischief somewhere else. They eat and do other things. So when we look at the goat, we have to understand that this example would have been known by the shepherds in the separation. It is saying that I am separating the righteous from the unrighteous. Not just goat and sheep. And even the terminology which Jesus is getting ready to say, the left and the right, which even further solidifies where the goats stand. This verse introduced the theme of the second coming of Jesus Christ, where he will judge all nations. We cover this in Daniel, verse 7, 13 through 14, and it's in Revelations 11 through 15. Now, as we get into verse 32, it says, before him will be gathered a nation, will be gathered all nations, and he will separate people one from another as a shepherd separates sheep from goat. Now, I don't have to go back and beat that up already, because we've known that there is going to be separation. But this separation didn't just, the shepherd's not just going to stumble upon and say, I want to separate the sheep from the goat. Now, I'm talking a lot of farm terms here. And if you're a farmer, I am down here. If you work with farmers or you know farmers, if I'm incorrect, the shepherd doesn't walk out the morning of and say, I don't know what a goat looks like. I don't know what a sheep looks like. Now, I'll go back to this life of the sheep. A lot of the broken lambs, when we talk about Jesus and he says, my sheep hear my voice, we all recommend we hear that, right? We think that that's this, or is it this? I'm kind of merging both lessons here. I'm giving you a taste of two. When we see the shepherd has already made a connection with his sheep. So the separation is something that's surprising to the shepherd. It's not new to the shepherd. This separation is something that has already been foretold by the nature of the animal. You get what I'm saying? These things have already been done according to the shepherd. What is being seen here is the display of the action for the rest of us to know this separation is being done. Meaning, God knows who the goats are and who the sheep are, and they stand right next to each other right now. But when the time comes, the revelation of the sheep, we will go into our pen in happiness. The goat will be surprised, just like the goat when he comes on the farm and the farmer thumps him on the head for another bad act that they did. And now the goat looks confused and wondering why he's not classified with the sheep. If y'all don't believe me, go look up goat sheep. They are hilarious. Hilarious. So we see this separation isn't something that the master planned yesterday. It wasn't that he picked up and said, today I think I will learn how to separate goat and sheep. That's why when this judgment comes, it's imperative that what has been determined is determined. Confess now while it is still day. You see what I'm saying here? So as he gathers a nation, he separates the goat from the sheep. Separation of a nation. This verse highlights the separation of nations symbolized by sheep and goats based on their action. If you don't believe it, somebody go to Ezekiel 34 through 17. I'm at 34, and I want to start at 17 and end at 22.
Right, 17?
Yes, please.
Ezekiel 34:17. As for you, my flock, thus says the Lord God, behold, I will judge between one sheep and another, between the rams and the male goats. Is it too slight a thing for you that you should feed in the good pasture, that you must tread down with your feet the rest of your pastures? Or that you should drink of the clear waters, that you must foul the rest with your feet? As for my flock, they must eat what you tread down with your feet and drink what you foul with your feet. Therefore, thus says the Lord God to them, behold, I, even I, will judge between the fat sheep and the lean sheep, because you push with side and with shoulder, and thrust at all the weak with your horns, until you have scattered them abroad.
All right, we can stop right there. As you can see, actions of the goats, actions of some sheep and actions of bull goats inside of this category. You see, a breakdown goes even further. Now, he's judging between the two sheeps, sheeps that are fat that nudge the other sheeps that lack. Now, why is this important? Because just like, remember what I told you about the shepherd and his sheep also gets left out. Remember, I told you about the broken spirited bum lamb. Well, the mother would feed the other sheep while pushing the other. So as they would start to nurture from the mother, the other sheep would lack, wouldn't get. The other sheep would grow fat. So this judgment is between even them, the goat for what they did to treading down. Now, as we talk about the nations and we know what's coming in Revelations, we can see some of the treading down of what we have, how we live. The sheep are being forced to eat what has already been trampled upon. You see, this judgment is coming, and it's not just isolated, but it's putting everybody in their category, because this is what the Lord does. He judges righteously. Whatever category you are in that category righteously. And I wanted to point that out as the nations call. But it also in the psalmist tells the sheep from the shepherd, we do not lack. And that's Psalms 23:1. We lack nothing as his sheep in his fold. So now we know that this judgment is coming for the goats and the sheep. So the sheep can kind of rest easy because we know that we have been called by the shepherd. But we do know that this judgment is coming because this is like the kingdom of heaven, which approaches. Now, as we go to verse 23, he will place the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on his left. Now, and we've been paying attention to the Bible studies and everything that's been said here, we've learned that what comes from the left? Sin. In short, to you, I get what you're saying. And I'm going to use that word because that's what comes to the left. Destruction. Things that are going to take the sheep out of the fold. So when we see this, we know that what goes to the sheep is righteousness, favor, grace, mercy. What goes to the goat is destruction. Now, I do like curry goat. I don't know why that just popped in my head, but figured I would share. All right. But the right hand represents favor, while the left hand represents disfavor and judgment. If you want supporting scripture, you can go over to Matthew 20:21-23, and it'll outline that for you. See, I might not need as much time as I thought I was going to need. I am, because I'm seeing like I'm rolling. But we're getting ready to hit a pivotal point here. The point of what I was making in the beginning, right? That God doesn't need us. So why is Jesus telling us that God, when he saw us, his hunger, so forth? I want to get ahead of the game, but I want you to stay. So we know that the left and the right is disfavor. Then the king will say to those on his right, this is a call, those on his right, come, you are blessed by whom? The Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. So again, remember what I said about the goat and the sheep? This separation of the two, it's not new. So people will tell us that this separation and the idea of it is a new thing or a concept that we vastly don't understand, but it's something that is put in place since the foundation of the world. And if you can understand that you as the sheep has already had a pen prepared for you, and I'm using sheep, I like to say we sheeple, using a pen, in a pen prepared for you from the foundation of the world, then the only thing now, knowing that you are a sheep, you can only reject going into the safety, the home, where the shepherd has prepared for you. Because if you stay out, then you are mixed and mingled amongst the goats. Inheritance of the kingdom. This verse emphasizes the inheritance of the kingdom for those who have kindness and compassion. Supporting scriptures will show. Go to Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 6:9-10, and Revelations 21:17. You don't have. I'm not gonna have us jump. Some I will, some I won't. Just write them down, take a note, put what was said beside it if you don't have a chance to go back and watch the video, and read and take in the context of what's being said about that particular thing. Now, this kingdom that has been prepared from the foundation of the world, it has some work in it. As we notice the parables that we've read, we've noticed the work to be done, the waiting patiently, to not lose the hope of coming. While in waiting, take the talents to build and edify, to increase the investment that the Lord has given us so we can increase the body. We know that there are things to be done. So in this coming of the kingdom, in the separating of the goat and the sheep, there's parameters that God is going to lay out before us. And when I read these parameters, it made me think of how many churches, when we hear this, the first thing they say is, we must go out and give away and cook and clean and do a million things for everybody else because you never know when you're working for God. I'll be a fool to argue against something that's positive in the world, but I have to step back and say, you're not working for God in the sense of he needs you for employment. This is why I pointed out what was said in the psalmist. This is recognition as the same thing all of these parables have been about, recognizing who you're dealing with. In a sense, the 10 maidens, 5 did not know that they were dealing with someone that could shut them out for all eternity. They only thought it was about keeping their lamps lit. The man with the talent didn't have the full understanding of, I have a talent, I need to work it so it would invest, because he didn't know the man he was working for. In fact, he tried to slide it in there and say, you are a hard man. So again, it's not a knowledge of who you're working for, because he wasn't a hard man, because he gave you talents to make your life easier. He wasn't a hard man. But he said, if you would have known that I was a hard man, you should have taken my coin to the bank, meaning everything in this parable requires action. I don't say this to say, now go out and find God and serve him. Because now you're trying to work for something. It isn't the recognition. And I had to go back and really pull this scripture together to not leave it by itself in understanding. So in 25, verse 35 to 36, the Lord says, for I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. So if I was to stop right there, I feel like I need to go start me a food service, open up a infinite water fountain, find as many strangers and tell them come to my house for dinner, go somewhere where people are running around, maybe a nudist beach, and start giving them clothes, get a job at the hospital, do the best I can to visit the sick while I'm there, and become a correctional officer, or go down to Jacksonville PD over there consistently daily to visit the prisoners. That's what it sounds like, right? And I will say those physical things were actually happening to the disciples. People who believed those were things that were required. But what if I said these reflect the Beatitudes? What is truly poor? Let's take a step into it. On the surface, for I was hungry and you gave me food. A physical hunger, a real need met with a real person. A deeper, as we look at through the Beatitude lens, blessed are those who are hungry and thirst for righteousness. Hunger equals desire for God. Emptiness, longing, lacking of spiritual nourishment. This is the person who doesn't have an answer, who is dry and depleted on the outside and searching, who needs truth, presence, and patience. When we think of the food, we're quickly to offer a physical food because that's the fastest way to get somebody out of our face when they're hungry. But most people who come to you and they're hungry, it's not just the need of the physical food. It's something internally that they're asking for, a hunger that they haven't reached out and fully felt in their own belly, because it's a hunger that we don't have. We don't have that same hunger because we are being fulfilled through Jesus Christ. But those that don't have and they come to us with this hunger, we just give them the things that they're presenting to us. Then have we truly seen and helped God? A hungry person that goes without meals will eventually die. A hungry person that goes without spiritual nourishment will die a second death. I may not always have a plate of food to dish out, but I can always give you Christ. I can share what I have internally in me. Do you recognize Christ's spiritual need, not just the material lack? Not did you preach at them, but did you feed what was empty? Did you nourish? So now when we see God saying, I was hungry, he's talking about his body of believers that come looking for nourishment, looking to be their thirst to be quenched. A sinful man that you give a bottle of water still walks away in thirst. Secondly, I was thirsty. Did you give me drink? I was thirsty and you gave me drink. Thirst, survival, a survival level need. After a certain amount of days, the human body, when it doesn't receive water, it begins to do certain things internally to its own system. It almost eats everything on the inside. So you need water to survive. This is something that, again, we don't want to just see the physical need. But as we look into it, into the scripture, thirst is a craving itself. How many times have we seen people in conversation, even in slight, you know their thirst, you know their hunger, but instead of nourishing them with the word, you send them on their way. Now we see how that second half is starting to hit a little impact. And we ain't even got into it. And everybody, I can look around the room and you can see how the ladder is going to hit so hard. Because I want you to understand, God is not out here laying on the sidewalk begging you. He does not need you. A cattle on 1,000 in that day symbolized an infinity of value. What can you give me? Now we know this was in concerns with the home, the house, the sacrifices, Israel falling away from where they were supposed to be. We know all of this comes into context. But I want you to continue to put that in your head that God loves us. His need for us is that love for everyone. So he utilizes us. Well, God, are you utilizing someone who is next to me to represent you? Just put that thought in there. Deeper in scripture, thirst is a craving itself. My soul thirsts for God, Psalms 42. If anyone thirsts, let him come to me. That's in John 7. This is the person being burned out, spiritually dehydrated, running on fumes. We see people like this every day, but yet we'll stand at a marathon and watch a person run and have the understanding to hand them a bottle of water when they are burned out, when they are in need, when they're extremely thirsty. But we can stand next to someone and forget how thirsty and hungry they are. All right, let's continue to move on. The recognition. Did you offer refreshment, not judgment? Sometimes water looks like listening, mercy, a space to breathe. I don't know how many times in my life I've been thirsty, meaning I was at my lowest point. I was burnt out and I needed it. And I had family around. I had friends to come and say, let me pour into you so you're no longer thirsty. Now, some of them did this without even being saved. You get what I'm saying? So again, by how we look at this, a person who poured into me was not even of my fold, but yet he was utilized, or she was utilized by God to do so. So when these people have this question on that back end, and we'll get to it, when, God, when did I reject you, or when did I do for you? It's not something anyone in here is aware of. It's not, you know it, but you don't. Because the mystery was, when did I do it? Because if I make you too aware, then it becomes work. These are things that should be natural, autopilot. Not because it's naturally in us, it's because Christ has came in and he has realigned our beings. Now, science might pull out a DNA and say, well, DNA says your molecules are unchanged. Well, you're probably missing one thing in there that science can't define. Because every molecule in you has changed when you come into Christ. Why? You are now a rewritten code over an old code that the old coders only know how to pull out out of the old system. They can never properly pull the new code out, so it's something that they won't understand. So therefore, when we see this, we have to fully understand that we have been rewritten to do this, to quench the thirsty, to feed the hungry. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me in. Y'all mind if I take a little bit more time? Because I really don't want to just leave this hanging. I was a stranger and you welcomed me in. On the surface, a foreigner, an outside, one without belonging. We understand that this is what we do for strangers because that is the definition of a stranger. We can physically do that, which puts us in a place that we do what? We go back to that cat on 1,000 hill and tell God what we physically did for him. I took in a stranger, Lord. I gave you water, Lord. I did this. We start to sound like the man on the road in Luke where he said, well, if you've done all those things, go sell everything and then come follow me. We don't want to get into a point where we start to tell God what we did. This is why it's such a mystery in this text between the groups. Even the goat being separated and the sheep's being separate, mystery. We can identify ourselves as the sheep, right? Because it has been revealed to us. But to others, that is a mystery. It is sheep right now that is a mystery they're sheep. It is goat right now, they probably believe they're sheep. You get where I'm going with this? It is a mystery. Because this is what you get when you dwell deep into the text. You get to see the purpose of what God is saying to the people for the life-living work that we do as believers, not work we do to prove that we are believers. So when we see the foreigner, a deeper spiritual understanding is someone is alienated, unseen, disconnected from God and community. Remember when Jesus got off I can't remember what town he went into, but he got off the boat and there was a man in a cave who was possessed by demons. They said we tried to chain him up. We tried to do everything we could do with this man to the point that we just isolate him away from us. Do you understand the loneliness that he would have felt? In his torment, in his pain, in his deep well of his stomach, everybody is saying, I reject you. Sounds very familiar, right? What did I say about the bum lamb? He takes the rejected and he used him to be part of the gospel. Because that one that everybody in the world might have seen as a goat was a sheep to God. So a recognition test. Do you recognize Christ outside of your circle? Not did they believe right, or did you make room for them to come in? See, when a stranger comes to your home, what do? Now, I like to say, I love my house. I can have a smaller house, and I'll be just as happy. But I'm thankful that when we were buying our house, my wife said, let's get some extra rooms. And I looked at her and said, we don't need all extra rooms. She said, yes, we do. We might want to do X, Y, Z. But in time, I was able to take in for not metaphorically, but the stranger. You get what I'm saying? I had the space prepared to do so. Not waiting for someone to say, well, maybe a stranger will come and then I'll build a room. It was already there, prepared for him. This speech, this way we live, the way we think. When you think about it, doesn't it sound like he prepared our pen or our barn or our home or our many rooms from the foundation of the world? So we live. Am I living how Christ wants me to live? Yes, because I prepare a place for a stranger before they even come. If you can look into yourself and see Christ-like patterns, you will see how when God is saying what you did for me, you won't stand and say, well, I knew that, God, but you might smile a little bit and be like, I thought that might have been it. You know, that gift, everybody, Christmas just passed, right? And you open up that one present and somebody say, oh, and they open up, oh, I thought this was going to be it. Because you're surprised, but you had a clue. You see? Now, when I was naked, you clothed me. Lack of clothing, exposure. Now, if everybody in here at Firm Foundation right now took their clothes off and went crazy in here, you would bet that that internet video will be beyond viral. Why? Because everybody would see what we don't want the world to see collectively. You get what I'm saying? So when we think about the nakedness, everybody can understand how nakedness is embarrassing, shameful. Not saying I ain't kind of buff on here, but it's shameful to those who aren't aware that you shouldn't be naked. Now, why is that important? How do we help when someone is naked? Well, the scriptures tell me that if you aid your brother, you cover many sins. All right, so am I associating sin with nakedness? No, I'm not. The scriptures are. A lack of clothing, exposure, meaning you're out there, your body, your being has the potential for the world around it to damage it because you do not have protection layers on. We talk about the full armor of God, right? Put it on. Get clothed with it. Fine, perfect. But what is the true nakedness? That's the protection once you're in there, but you had to be naked and exposed before the Lord to truly understand how naked you were. Lack of clothing, nakedness in the scriptures equals shame. Adam and Eve realized they were naked after their sin. It wasn't before their sin, because if this was Adam and Eve time and we were shooting this on Zoom, everybody would be naked and it wouldn't be known. There would be no need for leaves. There would be no need to cover up our shame. What we have been made aware of, what everyone else has been, when we hear Adam and Eve's nakedness, how many of y'all cover your eyes? Got a visual. When they run to the bush, they ain't got no clothes on. But we see their shame. God has put Adam and Eve's shame for us to see their nakedness, but he covered and clothed them in his grace and mercy. So this is another quality in us. How so? If nakedness equals lack of clothing, exposure, and nakedness equals the shame, and we know that Adam and Eve share that same shame, shame that demands cover. When we see this person, he is exposed by failure, or she is exposed by failure. They are marked by sin, things that they have done in their life that they feel, I'm so ashamed I could never tell anybody. How do you free somebody from a sin that they feel they can't even utter off their mouth? You give them the one that hears it all. Now, I'm going to take that analogy back to the bum lamb. That bum lamb is naked. In birth, he has no clothing of his mother. He's exposed. He is ashamed. And we would say that lamb did nothing wrong. You are right. But what did David say in the same psalm? In sin, my mother conceived me. Whether you came out right by your standards or wrong by your standards, you're wrong by God's standards until he comes and change your status. You don't change your status. The shepherd picks the bum lamb up and places it close to his heart. therefore establishing a connection that can never be broken by the Lamb. Got that one for y'all too. This person is exposed by failure, marked by sin, ashamed by who they are. Do you understand when we talked about the other one, loneliness, isolation? Can you imagine? Do you really think the man who came wailing with the demons, that he wasn't ashamed, that he was covered? When we talk about the lepers in the scriptures, everyone in the world, that time, knew not to go near a leper. So a leper was already ashamed of the sin that he carried because it isolated him from everyone else. Who will cover his shame? A recognition. Do you cover or do you expose? Which one is it? How many conversations have you had? Again, this is not an attack. This is the line of questions that the Bible should make you ask yourself so that you can go and work according to God's will. When you see someone, do you expose their sin as what they did? Or do you cover their shame and help them? Not hide it, not cover it up like the talents being thrown in the ground. No, you work them through it to be better through the things that you have been given to make yourself better. You get what I'm saying? It's not a self-improvement because somebody is always helping somebody else improve. And that person is not the first start. Earlier today, we heard that Jethro came and told Moses. Well, where did Jethro get that idea? We know he got it from God. But you have to look at Jethro as well. Jethro was a herder. Jethro had daughters. Jethro's daughters was the main people who took care of the herd. Jethro saw a need in his own life, in managing his own flock, and managing his own family. And he saw Moses going down the same line of where it was. Now, here is where God has said, Jethro's life is not the life we need to focus on. It's Moses who going forward, and he needed all of Jethro's life to be accumulated in one sentence. Moses, you need help. I'm not going to sit here and tell you how much help I needed. I'm not going to tell you how bad it was for me because I'm older. I got my daughters. I got my family. You brought them back from the well, actually. He said, you need help because this is something that Jethro would have felt inside of him. He would have covered something that Moses wouldn't have felt he could do. So when we see this covering, this clothing, the clothing here is grace, restoration, protection of dignity. Moses would have been looked at as a bad leader. But the people lacked the understanding, not Moses. His leadership was in tune because he was trained as a leader from back in the past. But what it was is he didn't understand delegation, passing it out, because he hadn't been there yet to be fully abused like Jethro was by the years of working it himself. Jethro was a man who had daughters. He would have had to work the land the whole time by himself, managing it. When his daughters went down to the well, they were teased by the men, and I'm using tease here, basically not given the water needed for their flock until Moses came. Do you see this constant covering? So you already see the woe of Jethro. It's just when it got to Moses, it became solid information to go forward and do better. So we ourselves don't clothe ourselves. We have been clothed, and we can talk about our clothing to others. If you go and you look man, it's slipping my mind here. I'll get back to it. It's basically about when, well, it's just one of those things. It's just popping up. When I don't want to give it half cock, so I'm gonna leave it, but it definitely stick here to come back to. All right. When I was sick, you visited me. Now, yes, sick, illness, weakness, things that we, again, relatable. We can point these out. Go and visit the sick and shut in. Go and see such and such who is down and ill. Take that over to them. This is the things that we feel like we have to do physically. But when we take a deeper look in this, sickness often represents brokenness, trauma, inner wounds, ongoing struggle. Well, how can you say those things at it? Because when you look at an illness, right? Some illnesses come from trauma. Some come from inner wounds. Some come from diseases in the body. But it continues to go on until you are healed. You know, the one thing I learned in medicine is that a sick person will stay sick. I don't care how much they say, I'm going to get better on my own, or they'll stay sick. That virus is in you. If you don't get a cure to get that out of you, it's in you. That's why we have recurring colds. That's why seasonal, we got to go get shots and different things, because these things are recurring because our body has already been exposed to it. Higher exposure, some people get it more often. Lower exposure, some people don't deal with it at all. But when we see this, it's the exposure to these illnesses, the exposure to the brokenness, exposure to the trauma, exposure to these inner wounds and ongoing struggle. But not everything that is broken is visible. Here it is when we see it in the person who can't get it together, who, make sure I get on my notes, who keeps struggling, who isn't improving enough. We feel as though we can put the building blocks into a sick person and stack them up and make them better when we never gave them a true foundation of healing. I want you to not just have what I'm giving you, because what I'm giving you is finite. It will dissolve and disappear just like this body that is standing in front of you. But what I want to give you is the gift of going forward, a foundation where you can heal, where you can go to the healer and be healed, because I'm not the healer. That's like somebody coming out the doctor's office, and when they leave, somebody going in the doctor's office say, hey, tell me everything the doctor just told you. And I tell them that, or that person tells them that, and they turn around and walk away from the clinic. You didn't get healed, you just heard about the cure. We have so many just hear about the cure, but they won't clinic themselves. A recognition test. Did you stay present or only show up when they're strong? Healing begins with presence. We have to be there. As the body, I said when I first said, when I came back, it was something different that I feel when I can't come here, because being present means something. It's a healing in that. A smile, a laugh, a hug, a handshake. I don't care how bad my day going, when I come in here, there is a healing presence. And I want to tell you, it is you and it ain't you. Now you do with that information what you want. If you understand this parable, you'll understand that it is you and it ain't you, because it goes back to say that we are the field, we are the workers, and we are the what? We everything. He works all through us. It all belongs to God. And that goes back to what he said about them cattle on thought. Everything in the earth belongs to me. Now here's one that tends to get away. I have a brother that is convicted. He's doing time. And sometimes I sit because of the distance of where he is, I feel like it's far, like really, really far to get to him, and it's hard. And a lot of times he tells me just don't come because I mix up. But I think about the things that me and my brother talk to on the phone often. And the one thing me and him share is our belief. I have never, even on a phone call, and my brother has been incarcerated for 15 years. I have never on one phone call heard this guy not smile. Now it's crazy, you don't see somebody, but I hear his smile even in his chains. I'm not saying he's Paulinian, but what I am trying to tell you is people can smile in their chains. And he tells me, I read my scriptures and share them around here every day. So it might not have been the whole 15 years, but at least a certain amount of years, he has been doing what Paul has been doing. And he smiles. It is insane, because I think if I ever have to go in there, I'm going to cry for 30 years. But he smiles. And that gives me to understand that some people have that job to do. But if I thought that was just prison, then I would miss the true purpose of what God was saying about when we do the work. On a surface, it means a literal being locked away, stored, no freedom. But on a deeper, it means bondage, held by guilt, condemnation, addiction, accusation. The scriptures call this captivity. We learn that he took the captive. and he freed those that were in bondage, those that were condemned, those that had the accusation, like the woman at the well, those that had the addiction and things they couldn't give up, the lust in their life, bound by chains of darkness, under condemnation. This person is defined by their past, locked inside shame, unable to forgive themselves. I ask this as a recognition test. Did you visit or avoid? Do you believe freedom was possible? And I'll pause right there because the next thing it talk, we're going to go into the rest of the service. Are there any questions? I know I ran through that kind of fast, but I hope it said what it needed to say. And I want to give y'all the end for something to think about. You know, what is it? Justifying the end from the beginning? Because this quote will come around again. Put this line in your head as we get ready to wrap this up. They never saw because they only believed what their eyes would allow. And because they did not believe, they could not recognize him when he stood amongst them. Thank you.